Many of you have, or potentially will have, say, children or friends that will have student loans. And so this is, regardless of whether you have them or not, it's good to brush up on your student loan facts. Student loans have become more and more popular, for lack of a better word, over time, and the amounts have been increasing. So in 2006, you're looking at about $500 billion in student loans, and by 2016, you're starting to approach $1.5 trillion, around $1 trillion increase in student loans in 10 years, just a tripling, and this is expected to continue to increase. Now, this is happening because the cost of education has continued to increase. It's really accelerated over, say, the last 20 years. There's been a big bump. And if you need additional proof, you can just look at the student loan amounts. And there are a lot of reasons for this with complex issues and politics involved. And we're not here to discuss the politics of it. We're here actually to discuss what is the best way for you to respond to it. What are some different strategies that you can employ with your student loans? There is a significant danger in student loans. In fact, out of kind of all the different forms of debt, student loans presently have the highest default rates out of the different forms of loans between student loans and credit cards and mortgages and auto loans. The default rate on student loans of, say, 90 plus days delinquent, 90 days without paying, is above 10%. So student loans, what are they for? It's for, obviously, say, your tuition, your schooling, but it's also for your other, potentially any other expenses you have during this time period that you are in school. And there's this temptation that, nobody actually says this, but perhaps we think it a little bit, is that it's free money, so we can just borrow as much as we can. And of course, that's not right. We have to pay it back. Also, one thing to consider is that in the United States, the industry, in 2010, this industry was essentially nationalized. So for most people, you're borrowing from and repaying the United States federal government. So if you don't pay, we are all in a lot of trouble. So should I get a student loan? Let's break this question up into sub-questions so we can understand kind of the flow of what we should be considering when we're going through this process of getting a student loan. First of all, should I go to college? Well, we've discussed this already in the past about occupations and the effect that college has. So we'll skip over that one for now. And the second is, what should I consider majoring in? And you should think through this even before you consider which colleges. Because, for example, if you're planning to, say, go into a profession where a very expensive college wouldn't help you much, then, that should factor into choosing where you go to college. And so, first of all, thinking through what occupations am I considering? What majors am I considering? And from there, we can decide, okay, based off of my interests, what's an appropriate match for which college that I choose, and also for what stages. For some people, it might make sense to get, say, an associate's degree at one institution, a bachelor's degree at another institution, maybe a master's or a PhD at a third institution. And so that's very normal. And knowing the answers before this, of what you're majoring in, helps inform this stage. Now, have I sought other sources of funding, grants, scholarships, tuition waivers? There are all sorts of sources of funding out there. Your university usually has within their financial aid office just kind of this resource, this guide of all of the different forms of grants and scholarships that you can apply to. That is worth your time to apply to. So that is a great source to go to first. The next question is, should I consider an internship or a part-time job? And this isn't for everyone, depending on your circumstances, but for many people, when they get career-related internships, it helps them in their job placement considerably. For example, if maybe on campus you want to do marketing after you graduate, if you can find an internship or a part-time job, say on campus, to help with their online marketing program, that is going to help you place at a job after graduating. So it's not only for the money, it's helping your career along. So then we get to question 6. Do I still need a student loan after 1 through 5? And if you say yes, Well, then let's go into what are the best options available. Now, this is the order that we should be considering. Government loans versus private loans. Government loans have all sorts of available potential benefits tied to them, which we'll walk through some of those today. And so government is preferred over private. The next question to consider is within government, there are subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans. Subsidized loans are the ones that the government pays the interest while you're still in school. Excellent. Goes to the third point. When you're borrowing money, you would prefer to take a lower interest rate before you take a loan with a higher interest rate. So it kind of goes in that order. We prefer government over private, we prefer subsidized over unsubsidized, and we prefer lower interest rates before entering into higher interest rate loans. Yay, you graduated, and now your repayment plan kicks in. Sometimes immediately, sometimes soon after what's called a grace period. So what are the different payment plans? Well, when you start, almost always historically, you are automatically put into the default standard repayment plan, where you will make the same payment every month for 10 years, and then you are done with your loans. The second category is a graduated repayment plan, which you can choose, which is that your payments are lower in the first few years and then they go up in the later years, which might make sense, say, if your income is increasing over time. Also, there's the extended payment plan, which is your payments go down, but you have to make them for longer, so you end up paying more interest. And those can extend out up to 25 years. And finally, there's the income-based repayment plan. Now, this is your go-to if repayment will be a struggle for you. And you need to make sure to do your homework to make sure you're doing all of this properly as well. You need to, for example, like certify your income every year and go through certain steps, but it can be ideal for certain people because you are only required to pay, say, 10 to 15% of your disposable income. And so maybe standard repayment plan, that amount would be a little bit too high. And so if you enter into an income-based repayment plan, it's calculated based off of how much you make. And then if there's still a balance left after, say, 20 years or 25 years, then the rest is forgiven. So if student loan repayment is going to be an issue for you, this is what you should be choosing. Also, some jobs will pay a percentage of your student loan debt every year, some private sector jobs as well as public sector jobs. I remember a CIA recruiter many, many years ago when I was talking to him mentioned that this was one of the benefits that they offered. I guess that's my plug for the Central Intelligence Agency. But the some public sector jobs also provide loan forgiveness, which will be better than, say, just an income-based repayment plan. But it does require a lot of paperwork. A lot of people thought they were going to get loan forgiveness, but they didn't check all the boxes and meet all the requirements. If you are in a situation like this where you're looking for loan forgiveness because you work in a specific public sector job, make sure to talk to a specialist, get everything in writing, make sure to do it the right way. Finally, bankruptcy. How about we just don't pay back the loan? No, that doesn't work. Student loans are very difficult to discharge in bankruptcy, rarely happens. And so just don't get cute if you're trying to get out of paying your student loans by going through some convoluted thing that you found on the internet. That is not the appropriate way of going about it. Now, the terms deferment and forebearance. Deferment is normal. You don't pay interest while you're in school. With subsidized loans, the government pays the interest on your loans for you while you're still in school. Fantastic. Unsubsidized just mean interest accrues, and that amount that you borrowed is actually just growing over time. Now, forbearance, let's say you are injured or unemployed, you could apply for forbearance, and that means you don't have to make payments every month. That could be good. And on the downside, the interest charges are just going to keep piling up. That's bad. Now, forbearance is easier to receive than most people think. Most of the time, just a call to the student loan service provider can provide that. However, if you are just simply struggling to pay your loans, don't do forbearance. Income-based repayment plan is what you should be focusing on. Also, forbearance, if you enter into forbearance, it usually stops the clock on, or could potentially disqualify you for some sort of loan forgiveness program. And so you really have to do your own work with any of those types of loan forgiveness programs. And again, if you are just struggling to pay your loans, do income-based repayment. Don't do forbearance. Now, many student loans have this attribute it's somewhat unique to student loans, and it's this concept of springy debt. So with many student loans, what happens is, let's say we're in March and you have your payment that's due in March, but you decide to pay more than the normal amount. And so this can help reduce your interest expenses. You're paying it off faster. But what many of these student loans do, they'll say, okay, well, you've paid this off in March, but in, say, September or December, what we can do is say, if you want to, you can just choose not to make payments for a while until, say, September or October hits. And then basically your interest has now caught up to where your old payment schedule was, and you're required to make payments again. And so you have this option of perhaps, going a month or two without making a payment, and there's really no penalty except for a little bit more interest. So this is kind of a form of saving that it doesn't really exist with other forms of debt. And you're allowed this flexibility. And so what you can do when you have this is that you can reduce your near-term fixed expenses if you need to. And this generates flexibility for yourself. Well, why is this important? Well, when you're evaluating, remember the avalanche method versus the snowball method. If we ignore the psychological benefits of, say, the snowball method for a moment, when you have this flexibility, this favors the avalanche method. Well, why is that the case? What you can do is that you can pay off a little bit extra across all of your loans to give you, say, a 5-6 month buffer. And then after that, you can pay off the highest interest one first. Because if you need that flexibility, the primary benefit of, say, the snowball method outside of psychological benefits, if you need the flexibility of a snowball method, what you can do is just you have that flexibility already. Also, remember the dual income trap. As far as dual income households, you should have a large, cushion anyway, because of that added risk of, say, one person losing their job out of two. What you can do, you can pay extra across all of your student loans. And so for my scenario, when I was in those circumstances, what I did is that I put in, at least 9 months of kind of prepayment across these loans. And if I don't need to tap into that, then I just paid less in interest. And if I did need to tap into that, which I thankfully did not, but I had that flexibility if I needed to.